Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome. You're listening to Perfectly Healthy and Toned Radio with your host, Darren Fatman McDuck. And now, prepare to get fat. Hey, what's cracking? Welcome back to another episode of Perfectly Healthy and Toned Radio, brought to you by I'mTheFatMan.com. I'm your host, Darren McDuffie. Hope everybody's doing good tonight. I myself am doing swell. I am very excited because Swamp People came back on, and I'm a big fan of Swamp People. I don't know how many of you out there listen to that, but I do watch that. So I'm very excited about that show coming back on. I get excited about little things. That's all I get excited about. So just wanted to share that with you and hope that you're having a good evening tonight. Tonight we're going to have Dr. Lynn Lafferty on the show, and I know Dr. Lafferty personally. She's a friend of mine, waiting for her to call in. But while I'm waiting for her to call in, I'm going to get a few announcements out of the way. If you have not checked out my blog, please go and check that out, I'mTheFatMan.com. I just did a blog last week on thinking outside of prescriptions, where I share a call that I did with Danny Walker. You can go back and check that call back in the archives and listen to how Danny helped her husband through an autoimmune disease known as sarcoidosis. And she did a lot of research and found out what was working for him and what wasn't working for him, and she totally pulled him off of prescriptions, and he was able to put the autoimmune disease back in remission with just using things in the diet and certain type of supplements. So go and check that out. I did a blog on that as well, and within that, I discuss my personal plight of my mother. And for those of you who've been following me for any amount of time, you know that my mom passed away from breast cancer, and I share that with you in there and how I started thinking outside of prescriptions. So go and check that out. If you have not connected with me on Twitter, please do that. My Twitter handle is TheFat, that's PHAT _man. So connect with me on Twitter. Also, please connect with me on Facebook. If you have not liked my Facebook fan page, please do so. The Facebook fan page is facebook.com/I'mTheFatMan. So you can go in there, and generally I post different stuff in there. And when I post that stuff, it's just helpful tips and things that you need to know. I just posted something today about if you have contact lenses and you have a eye infection. There's a product that I use called Silver Hydrosol, made by Solvent Silver, and it saved me a couple of times when I've had a couple of eye infections. And instead of just going to the ophthalmologist and sitting in there waiting to get a prescription, I tend to use that. And you can use it for all sorts of things. You can use it for eye infections. They also have one if you have sinus problems. And I don't make any money from the product. I just generally like to pass on helpful tips to you. If I can get you to stop using prescriptions or going to prescriptions and use something natural, I want to always point you towards that. So let me see if this is Dr. Lafferty on the line. Dr. Lafferty,
Hello?
Is that you?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I can hear you great.
Okay,
So,
great.
Yeah, I was just getting some announcements, but those announcements are over, so let's just get into the show. And welcome to Perfectly Healthy and Toned Radio, Dr. Lafferty.
Thank you for inviting me. It's exciting to be on with you.
For the audience out there, can you tell us how you started your health journey?
Yes, I am a pharmacist. I went to school at University of Georgia, and I got my doctorate at Nova Southeastern University. And I got very ill when I was in my late 30s, and I was put on a drug that I had something simple, actually. It was a fibroid, and they put me on a drug that made me very ill. And so I had many medications, surgeries, one mishap after the other. And I had read a book, a cancer book, and my mother, fortunately or unfortunately, got cancer, and she went to a naturopath who had helped my cousin to heal himself from cancer. And when I went there, the naturopath said to me, you should be doing these herbs and diet, or you're going to end up like your mother. So that's what I did. I went on the diet and herbs. And I had gone to the best hospitals, Stanford, UC San Francisco. They're rated the top medical schools in the country. They're always in the top 5. And got no help, just got sicker and sicker, went to a naturopath. In 3 months, I felt better. So I went back and I studied the pharmacology of how herbs work and naturopathic medicine. So that's how I started my health journey.
Cool. And I didn't know something about you. I know we talked at length, and Dr. Lafferty is actually my friend for you, those of you out there listening. I did not know you were a chef. So you're going to have to cook something for me.
Okay. Yes,
I had no idea you were a chef.
Yeah, I studied in San Francisco. As a matter of fact, a very good friend of mine who's one of the top chefs. He's cooked with many of the top chefs. He grew up in the housing projects, didn't speak a word of French, and he took himself to Paris and landed there, and he cooked in Europe and with some of the top chefs for 20 years, and then he came back and was a chef in the top restaurants in San Francisco. So he taught me a lot of things about cooking, but of course I'm also Italian, so we learn to cook at a young age when you're Italian as well.
So you're a jack of all trades, but so let's talk about, because I know when you and I talked, you were very adamant about talking about the consciousness of disease. Can you kind of explain that to us, explain that to the audience, rather, about what you mean when you talk about the consciousness of disease?
Well, I think as more and more information is coming out about the human body, about energy, about quantum physics, that we're more and more learning that every cell in our body works almost as a computer, if you will, and that it's programmed by maybe a certain vibration or a certain frequency, and drugs can disrupt those frequencies. Homeopathy, which is a type of very diluted product, if you will. It's so diluted you can't even detect that it's in the solution, but is there a vibration still left behind that it somehow helps the cells repair themselves? So we're learning more and more about that. So a few things I noticed. When I was in pharmacy school, last year we were with medical doctors, we were with the medical students, and we just went on rounds all day long in the hospital. And when I saw cancer patients, they were so kind of quiet and polite, and they would say to the nurse, "Oh, nurse, excuse me, but you didn't bring my 7-Up. Could you please do it? I've kind of been waiting an hour," just very sweet and kind of genteel. And then when you'd go into the cardiac ward, the people would be screaming at the nurses and maybe cussing even, who knew. So I was like, wow, these diseases really have different personality types and personalities of who are affected by that. So that was one thing that I learned at a very young age. I just had a epiphany, and really witnessing that, and really being an observer of the patients, and how they would interact with different treatments or different people were very interesting. Then the second thing I noticed was, when my patients would come to me with with a crisis, illness, is it really your soul asking you for a course correction? Because that's really what I felt for myself. I was on a very disruptive, very anxious, anxiety-producing course. I had my own business. It was collapsing. wrote 4 books in drug education. I went all over the state of California, training teachers, selling my books, and my life was just really full of angst and anxiety. And I believe that my disease was really a time for me to reflect upon what did I want. And even as my mother, when I took her to this naturopathic doctor, my mother was very intuitive. And when we came out of the office, I said to her, well, what do you think about what he's asking you to do? And she said, well, I think that if I want to live, I need to do that. She goes, what do you think? And I said, I think my mother's life was full of angst and anxiety. And I said, I think that you are coming up for a change, whether you do it in this body or in the next, you make a transfer over to another type of, I believe, life.